When you listen to your favorite tracks and listen to your favorite grooves, they sound really good, aren't they? So we are going to make grooves that you will be proud of today. Grooves like this. Before we start, I understand sometimes people think production in this channel gets a bit more advanced and it could be not the cup of tea for the beginners. If you feel so, don't worry. My goal with this channel is really showing you the industry standard, what the pros do. And because of that, sometimes my videos can be complicated and advanced. I try my best to make them as simple as possible, but if you don't understand, don't worry. I have other videos like this here that is more beginner friendly. So you start here, learn the basics, and then you can come back to this type of videos later on, okay? But if you are here, I assume that you are serious with your productions and you really want the cream of the production. So let me help you do that. When you hear this groove, it almost feels like you can do anything on top of this and it will work out. Because the fundamentals are so solid, everything else will be super easy. Let's build this from scratch. The first thing for this type of grooves are very solid kicks. Your kick is really important. If you are finding yourself doing a lot of EQing stuff, you probably picked the wrong kick. I'm gonna use the best kicks in techno world. These are called seismic techno kicks. I'm so proud of them. I really think that they are the best techno kicks out there. So the one that I pick is sounding like this. Thumpy but very strong in-your-face type of kick. For the track later on, I realized that I don't want the top end that much, so what I'm doing here actually, removing this top end. But in the beginning, I won't suggest you EQing at all. EQing really depends on the other parts of the groove. And actually, I have a video about that one here. Take a look. I explain a bit more detail. Your EQing of the kick most likely depends on your hats and other things. For this groove, I'm going 8 bass. You basically have 8 times in a bar like. This sounds pretty dang good. Low end is extremely important. Your bass and sub bass has to be really glued to your kick and they have to sound amazing together. The one thing I often do, I group my low end and start oftentimes with like SYNTHS limiter. In this case, it's not doing anything. And this one I will do it later on. So, of course, you realize the kick and the bass is hitting at the same time. So what I would do, I'm using that to sidechain to bass. I'm not completely deleting it because I just liked it. You can go like 100%, completely clean it up. I probably left it here simply because I liked it. I can already feel like, feel the groove, right? This is like my analog sub patch. If you don't know, I actually share these training files on my Patreon. And this project file will be there as well. So if you are curious about how these are made, or if you want to take a look at the project file, you can always take a look at the Patreon. But this is just basically sustain amp, sustain volume envelope, and a shorter plucky envelope on the filter, right? You can hear this sounds real analogish, like kind of in your face, warm. This is due to I'm driving the filter into dirty, that is analog filter or more kind of saturated filter in Hive. I really like that filter for this type of stuff. It sounds a bit more like old school synthesizers. I think that was the purpose with that filter as well. I have a Moog over here. This for me is good enough. I don't care about that because of this sound, right? So then we need the top line. Again, this type of modern techno grooves, simplicity is important. You don't need to go super crazy with super maniac bass lines basically. What I'm doing again, using the 8 bass, now we have this. Now this is much more open. What I want is, of course, not the low end, cut that off. But I want also kind of pinch the sound. Pinch means like basically changing the wave shape so that it's a bit more punchier. For that, I'm using disperser without. It shifts the sound to the high end, right? And sidechain. Cutting super highs, but then I'm cutting super lows as well. I'm completely removing the fundamentals, so these two can blend better. Right? They sound super nice together. And now we have this. The reason I'm separating it just gives them more control. I don't want to pinch this up because that means I will lose the low end if I pinch this up. These ones together sound super nice like this. And then we go to the group and use this one just to get this Pultec curve. Video over here explains more. Boosting this up and cutting down a bit like the around 100, 200, 300 hertz. It creates kind of a sub-separation. Makes the sound a bit smoother overall. Without, with. It's a subtle change. I like it, some people don't like it, but I think this is the sound of kind of smoother modern techno style, right? Now the groove of modern techno track is very snappy, tight but saturated drums. They have to sound warm, they have to sound full. How do you get it? So first thing we will use the snares. I really like to use analog samples. I have even pack for it. I know it sounds like I'm just telling about my packs, but this also what I use with the people, like top producers. I have those people and they will just use these ones as well. But the idea is, if you have your analog samples, use them. You don't need to buy this one, right? Just to make it clear. This is just like an analog clap. You heard it on 100,000 times. Slightly saturated. When I recorded these samples, I actually ran them through like an outboard gear so that we can get this analog warmth in it a bit more. Right? It probably swarms slightly warmer than it used to be. But if you just put it over here, it's not full enough. Listen to this. The trick oftentimes with these are actually, we use first EQ, boost that highs a bit. Then I'm using a reverb. But that tail, I definitely don't want that. And I also want the reverb to kind of blend in the sound. What you do is actually use overdrive after reverb, drive the reverb together with the sound so they kind of glue each other now. But that makes also the tail even longer. What do you do then? First, put into a clipper so we can shave those super transients. Here's how much we are shaving, more or less, like a dB. And then you can use anything, but again, I'm using black for this. I'm gonna like remove that tail by volume automation. From here. In your face, very full. One of the most common things in modern techno tracks are having really deep percussions, and this is probably one of the things that a lot of producers fail. These are oftentimes made with the FM synthesis, using one oscillator to modulate another oscillator, so it creates this kind of weird, deep, plingy sound. I don't know how to explain this. I'm going to use my samples. In my presets, there are also FM type of sounds. Let me know in the comment section if you need like a tutorial about this one, this type of FM percussive sounds, but they will sound like this. Right? Hard to put them into the context without the track. I want like a triple hit, something like this. Dun, 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 right? You can oftentimes detect a couple of different versions. I'm not going to exaggerate it for this one. How do we get this sound? First, we have the original sound like this. For me, I felt like I want to remove the tail. Like that. So we drop down the tail a bit. And then EQ. And saturation. So sound is fuller. You see, there's a common theme. Like we are not really saturating too much. It volumes up a bit, but it's a rather subtle saturation, I will say. And then I'm again just removing super transients with the clipper. This gives me this super nice ambience. These are really important for techno. You can even make it darker. Some people would go like this. Right? I like a bit more open because everything is in context, especially when you put the hats and so on. It can be nice to have some high end on top. Another thing that you often see is impact sounds for this type of tracks, this type of sounds. This also provides the ambience. Again, we will have another like a subtle background, but most of the ambience are coming from these hits and percussions. Right? And then this is my personal preference, but you will often hear this type of stuff, especially if you listen to, for example, Adam Bear and so on. You will have this old school classic clap hits, chop, chop, chop. And oftentimes those clap hits are around the turnout points, like either 4 bars, 2 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars, just to make the track a bit get going feeling. Right here, we can put like 2 claps, like this. It sounds very weak. What we do again, similar to what we did before, put a reverb, drive it, and EQ it a bit brighter. Now we have this. Right? Very cool. Now, once you have done this, the thing that you need to do is actually your high-end. Very important. I oftentimes actually would go high-end right before the call and response or percussion, simply because I think high-end is a bit more important. But in this case, it's easier to hear them without a high-end. So I want to just illustrate that part. So for the high-end, the first thing probably you will see will be like a 16 hat. You don't need to just put 16. In this case, I'm just like putting one note off. The same sound, but a bit shorter difference. So it will create a bit like different feeling. If you listen, this is our sample. Again, this one is another analog sample, and it's like a short version, slight EQ. And it's just kind of sidechained a bit. It's like kind of offbeat. It's kind of pull and push. And on top of that, you will oftentimes have an offbeat hat, like you have this open hat. What we do, EQ, right? The problem is a bit too clean. First, overdrive. Then I want to control the tail using that. And then final EQ to remove a bit sibilance here. And now this turns into this. Right? Very saturated, very full. But if you listen together with track, the reason we did this like offbeat feel with the 16 hat is because our bass is offbeat. So this over side chain kind of really glues everything together, right? Like this is not good. Can you put this? It's so good. Now this part is optional, but many times you will see that people actually layer this one as a right layer. It almost sounds like noise, but it's basically like a very high-pitched percussion filling up the super highs. In this case, how do you do that? You pick a right sample, again coming from my analog drum samples, and you saturate especially highs, and then you put a very aggressive sidechain, so it kind of breathes, and together it will fill on the background of the hat. Right? This is the most of the groove. This is modern techno. This is like the style you will see with of labels like Drum Code, Adam Beyer, Leighton Giordiani, and so on. Like a modern techno groove stuff. The extras that you can do is of course like getting a subtle ambience. This is a sample. I probably find it from Splats. I don't remember. I may have resampled it. I don't know. I don't remember. So this is a color band, and then you can just put like a downlifters, uplifters. Don't exaggerate them, please. They has to be a slightly more subtle. Shorten them up 100%. Okay, you are wondering where are the acids, right? Where are the acid hits? This is my own preset again. You can find it on my Patreon. This is my kind of prodigy acid sound. I use that a lot. This is made with Arthur Acid V. Sounds like this. It's very prodigy style, like more warmer, but in your face. Slight accent, drive. We have distortion phase. Like this is really classic acid sound. The only non-classic thing will be like multiband here. Old days you don't have this, but this really brings up the highs a bit more. Right? Really driving highs. And goes into another EQ into the wall high. Very in your face. I think it's amazing sound. I use it all the time. Let me have this. Play this in a club. I'm telling you as a DJ. By the way, while I'm saying DJ, I will be in Germany 7th of March with Tybuske Berlin, 8th of March Freiburg Fuse. You will see this on the screen where they are. So if you want to come watch me, you can come. But this is for me. If I play this in the club, from my experience, I tell the people dance just like 2 minutes non-stop. No problem at all. It requires a bit of finesse, a bit of knowing the sounds and properly processing it. But once you've done that, you will see that it's not that complicated either. You just need to pick the right sounds, process properly, and then they have to fit together, work together as well. And then you have this. So good, so good.